And our calling number is 563-999-3581 and press 1. And that puts you in the queue to talk to us. We'd love to hear your comments and questions because that makes this your show. We'll give Michael a moment. Oh, there he is. So welcome, Michael.
Here he is. Yes, thank you, dear heart. Delighted to be here once again as we get to move forward and all things rock and roll. Remember, everybody, to join us at 3:30 today. If you go to the notes, I'm sure it's there, and you can also go to our website under events, and at 3:30, we'll be doing a worksheet on the Hear My Voice Book Club, 3:30 our time, 8:30 in London, England. The Hear My Voice Book Club is out of London, and we certainly appreciate Yinka for setting that up and giving us the space to touch the people that she touches with this forgiveness process. And so we're looking forward to that. And I hadn't told you, Jeanie, but when I came back up, I had a note from Lou Corletto, who says that the editing is done on that interview that we did the other day. And he has a workshop this weekend and asked if we would come and do an hour in that 2-day workshop. So dropped a note back saying we'd be there. So there are more things happening all the time. All kinds of awesome things going on as we move these words forward into the consciousness of the world. Go ahead.
Michael?
Yes.
We have still point breathing on Saturday, so I don't know what time he was asking you, but
yeah, we haven't
we're already
certified
committed.
That yet, but yeah, that's easy. Cool. So do we have anybody out there with a hand up in the phone queue or anything happening in the chat room? Any questions from the app?
The chat room's still screwed up, and I haven't gotten any. I haven't looked at email today, so I don't know if I've gotten anything or not. And my computer's frozen up here, so I didn't see any hands up a moment ago. So I've got to unfreeze everything.
Okay. Well, I'll just chat a little bit while you're unfreezing. So delighted that you're here. And the other day, we brought up a TV series that we were talking about when we were talking with Magda on the phone, and it's a Netflix thing called In the Dark. And Magda had said that she had started to watch it, and the main character, and is just so despicable that she had decided to stop watching. Oh, we've continued watching that, and it actually gave me a nice gift today as we watched the last couple of sessions of it. And the woman who's the main character in it is about as despicable as you can get. But the demonstration that she gives, the gift that she gives, and I think it's perhaps someone's effort to help the world to build the brain cells for truth, is that she is just the perfect representation of the ego, and that she is driven by goals. Remember, the Course in Miracles talks about you must become aware of the distorting power of the way you want it to be. So this woman is single-minded, brilliant, despicable, but the way she wants it to be is the way she's going to have it. And it's just, I mean, we're well into it. I don't know how many sessions we watched, 25 or 30, but it doesn't matter who's in front of her or what's going on. She can make up and be so convincing, so beguiling, just so, inviting people in to support her in the way she wants it to be, that it's just like the perfect play out of the ego. And the stories that she'll fabricate, as the ego will, again, the Course talks about the distorting power of the way you want it to be. And she's so Just like the ego, I mean, such a great demonstration. Just like the ego, she can make up any garbage or any flowery story with which to manifest her goal. She'll just make stuff up and does it just on the spur of a moment in an instant. I mean, it's just exactly like the ego plays the game. And whatever it takes, it doesn't matter what she does to whoever's there, she'll do anything to manifest that goal. And, if you think about, if you've ever been in the catch of, the way you want it to be, something that you want, and hostility and fear is governing the mind. Notice the kinds of despicable things we've done, that's even to those that we cherish, when we're being run by goals based on hostility or fear. Things we'll make up, the attack we'll do to the person we say we cherish the most. I mean, think about, in the if you remember the first time you sat in the Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop, Jeanie probably asked you about holding a newborn child, and then asked you about, have you ever done anything you regret? And then pointed out that, notice that everything you've done that you've ever regretted was done out of some form of hostility or fear. The mind, the thousands of people we've asked that question of, occasionally somebody will come up with it, that they did it out of love, but what it really was out of some sort of attachment, some sort of fake condition that one could kid themselves into thinking that was love. And what really clicked as I was watching that again, the display so powerfully, and how tricky, how slippery we can be with ourselves and with others, how important the directive was 2,000 years ago when Yeshua says, seek ye first the community of love. Seek ye first your connection to love. Seek ye first the state of being conscious, active, present love. Because out of that state, no goal can interfere. When one is connected to and living in that state, there's nothing that would possibly become acceptable. If you ever think of those moments again where you regret having said or done something, what state were you in? And how the mind, how the ego mind, ego, remember, if you break that word down, if you recognize that the Creator is love, ego, edging love out, the Creator being God, the Creator edging love out, moving love out of the way for some sort of result that's wanted, even to the destruction of those close by, or perhaps even self. Afterward, once that attack is over and one is restored to their right mind, that is the mind of love, one, slaps their forehead and goes, oh my God, how could I have possibly done that? What was wrong with me? So in your single-minded goal is to remain connected to and be guided by the active presence of love in you, then everything, all of the offerings of the ego are irrelevant. The ego will try to exploit every situation. Jeanie, actually, we were talking about this, and she came up with this quote from the Course for me. The ego tries to exploit all situations into forms of praise for itself in order to overcome its doubts. That ego self will tell you that anything that gets in the way of the way you want it to be is the enemy. Again, even the most cherished friend. And that love itself is the enemy even. It'll go to that extreme. And that the only sensible answer to any question is achieve this goal, get this goal complete. And whatever you have to do to get there, and again, this is just the gift that this show has just kind of solidified for me, is just seeing that anything that you do that's off base, mind will call sin. Remember that word in Aramaic is simply an archery term that means off the mark, but we'll make it something that's permanent and real and deserves punishment instead of simply correction and healing. It'll even go to the point, I mean, if you listen to churchianity, it tells you about this wrathful God that's made up this horrendous place that you're going to fry forever because of that error. If you remember, Yeshua comes to give us the message and correct that old idea of a vengeful creator with the creator's simply here to be the space of love for you, to heal corrections. Or pardon me, to correct and heal those errors. So that story about a wrathful creator out to get you is just another ego story. And so it was just kind of a fun conclusion or picture for me of how ridiculous the ego can be, and does it over and over and over and over and over again to person after person after person after person. And why forgiveness is so important. And, you know, even the ego will even tell you a story about forgiveness that will leave you hopeless, i.e. that forgiveness is about how somebody else did it to you and you should just let them off the hook for your internalized pain. And so you let somebody off the hook for your internalized pain. And what have you done to change your internalized pain? Absolutely nothing. Where forgiveness, the one solution, is the tool with which you go inside yourself and you free yourself from those errors of the past. You free yourself from the insanities that have been imposed by an hostile, fearful mind. You are restored to the truth of who you are as the active presence of love, and embraced by love, because that's the only thing that love can do. Look out at all that, just sit and watch the tube for, 2 minutes, any given hour of the day, any day of the week, and watch the ego stories play out about how hopeless and helpless it is and how punishment is the eventuality. When, if you befriend forgiveness instead of perpetuating a situation, you've got a tool with which you bring correction to your own mind. And are freed from the world of hostility and fear. Yes, it may mean going back over painful situations many times, as layer by layer you become more vital and are able to process out those painful experiences. But that's the gift that forgiveness offers. And instead of burying deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into insanity to the point where drugs and alcohol become the only option, stepping into the active presence of love becomes the viable solution. And to do that, all any individual has to do is remember. You break that word down, and we think it's got something to do with memory, but it doesn't. To once again become a member, connect to who you are. Each of us, we've asked that question so many times. How many have ever held a newborn? Tap into the essence of the newborn. That's the truth of you. That's the truth of me. That's the truth of every person you've ever met, no matter how despicable they are. And what the world is crying for, literally crying for, is for people who are aware of that and stand solidly, firmly in that space of active love and become a beacon of light to support others, letting go, forgiving the hostility, the fear, the rage, the guilt, the drunken stupors, the addictions, the griefs, the pains, and moving forward. So we're here to support that understanding. And each pathway of explanation becomes another mechanism for undoing the insane mind and being restored to the truth. So that's, kind of a synopsis. In essence, that's what we're here to do. And Miss Jeanie, did you get unstuck with the computer?
I did, and we have a hand up.
Oh, sweet. Let's say hello.
All right. It's flip back over here. It's area code 770. You are on the air.
Hello, Jeanie. Hello, Michael. How are y'all?
Well, hey there, young man. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be
How do you
with
be,
you
Michael?
once again.
What's exciting in your world?
It's all exciting.
Well, tell me about it. Tell us.
All exciting.
Give us some insight.
Well, that's just wonderful to know some of these wonderful truths that you all share with us and how much lighter one's load can be.
Yay.
Yes. It's
Yeah,
really
that's such
refreshing.
an important point to just have the possibility of continuously and eternally lightening that load. Where the ego world says, oh no, there's another pound of flesh to be paid, another load to be carried.
Oh.
That's a good insight, good way to say it.
Yeah, I see and feel it each day listening to Tim, you, Jeanie, and the many others in the realm. It's beautiful. Beautiful. Appreciate y'all.
Well, thank you for saying thank you. How can we support you today? What's on your mind?
Yes. Well, a couple of things I'd like to share. I did not get a chance to look too deeply, but I believe you mentioned the name Bob Beck yesterday or the day before.
Yes. Yeah, Bob's a friend of mine.
Amazing. He was in energy work. I just wonder if you share a few more thoughts. Is he still with us?
No.
Or is he passed?
No, he passed away probably, I'm not even sure, maybe 10 years ago now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I thought that might have been the case. I thought that's what I remembered. So doing just a quick search, it looked like he had developed maybe two different types of energy, I don't want to call them machines, devices possibly?
Devices, yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yep.
Are those
Yeah,
things
one of them in
still
particular
available?
was for parasites.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I want to look into that more. Say again, please.
You've run into him, I take it then?
No, I just looked very briefly when you mentioned the name. I wanted to make sure that was the right guy. I want to look into that deep. I remember seeing a link about parasites also, so it must be the right guy. Mm-hmm.
That would be him.
Very interesting. Super. And before we switch off of him, anything else that comes to your mind about Bob's work?
No, you'll probably see some things with him around colloidal silver. He did a lot of work with colloidal silver along with his parasite machine. He was just a genius scientist. I mean, he worked in all kinds of arenas, was extremely well respected, and just the sweetest man, just the sweetest guy.
That is so neat. That's
warms my heart to think about him.
Beautiful man. Mm-hmm. Well, shifting, but still on the energy thought, I, of course, thought of you. I was reading an excerpt that Dr. Eva Detko shares on her email correspondences. I've followed her work for quite a few years. She's out of Europe. And her work is a lot of her work is in the psychoneuroimmunology, and which really intrigues me. And part of that writing of her latest book is along this line, that each of our cells have, of course, the receptors for both. This is my understanding now, and that's why I wanted to share it and get your thoughts and take, because I know you're well up on this. The cell receptors have the sites for energy frequencies and the chemical,
which are the same thing. Every chemical is just a different frequency. The same as the eye receives light, and there are a number of different frequencies, and the brain interprets frequencies differently, but they're all just energetic patterns. In exactly the same way, everything is frequency, everything is bound to, or is energy. And so the receptor site for a thought is simply in one frequency range. The receptor site for what we call a chemical is just another frequency range. You know, if you put it into Einstein's equation, or Einstein's understanding, he says, on such things as matter, we have been all wrong. What we have heretofore called matter is energy, whose vibrations have been so low as to be perceptible to the senses, and our senses perceive something as chemistry. You remember I've talked about, Bruce Lipton's work, where he's shown that if you think a thought, that thought becomes a molecule in the body, a neuropeptide, and lands on a cell. When it finds a receptor site that's in resonance with it, in order to land there has to be resonance. So when it lands on a cell that resonates, then if you were looking from inside the cell, what you would see entering when that neuropeptide inserts itself in the cell, what we call that frequency, is chemistry. But in truth, if there's no matter, there's obviously no chemistry. I remember presenting that thought. I was in Indianapolis, Indiana, Unity in Indianapolis, presenting that, and afterward talk about that specific thing about chemistry. A chemistry professor from one of the universities in Indianapolis came up there. He says, "You know something, Michael? You're right. We don't have a clue what we're talking about. It's all energy. It's all frequency."
Wow.
So yeah, receptor site, and it's interesting. They one of the things, just as a little aside here, many people talk about, or they used to. I think it's becoming less popular since new energetic science is being understood. But they used to talk about the primacy of the DNA, and that the DNA ran the game.
Right.
And what they found is that they can go inside of a cell and remove everything, and the cell will go on behaving as though nothing happened. But if they leave the cell intact and they use an enzyme that eats up, that dissolves the receptor sites, guess what? The cell stops functioning. And in order to, this is just is such a key in the whole resonance game. We had a conversation a little while back. Somebody was talking about, demons and things attacking. It's like, well, nothing can get into your field that there's not a resonance for. So whatever the energy of the so-called demon is, it can only that energy can only attach to a similar energy within oneself, and that's why forgiveness is always a solution, because if something untoward has attached itself, it's attached itself because there's a matching frequency. That's the only way it can attach. I can't sit here with an FM radio and ever get 900 on the AM dial. I can sit there and turn that dial back and forth through the whole spectrum of the FM radio till the cows come home, and I'll never hear 900 AM through that radio because there's no receptor site for it. There's nowhere it can land. And what forgiveness does is removes the energetic patterns that create the receptor sites that tend to keep us stuck in patterns. And most everybody's focused in the outer world, trying to go get the demons out there, forgetting that what's out there is irrelevant. It's what's in here that counts.
Mm-hmm. So when you're speaking about the receptor sites, I believe I've read that that's how a lot of these pharmaceuticals work, that they will block the receptor sites and actually change the course of the action of that cell. Is that a correct understanding?
Well, what happens, it actually is that, every drug, in order to work inside of a particular body, there has to be a receptor site for it. This is one of the reasons why drugs are so deadly and so toxic, because let's say, for instance, the brain needs a little bit of a particular, what would be called a neurochemical. So it might put out a few millionths of a gram of that chemical in order to balance itself, in order to function. And the doc says, here, take this pill, which is 100 milligrams. Now, the body would deal with that in micrograms, and so somebody takes in 100 milligrams of this. Now, there was one area of the brain that needed a few micrograms of this particular frequency, which the body would produce and would satisfy the need, but in comes 100 milligrams, and it doesn't just go to that receptor site, but that it goes to every receptor site in the structure and just blasts it with that overload of that so-called chemical, that particular frequency. And now, because the whole function of our structure depends on internal communication, why when someone takes something for the ABC disease, does it also cause the XYZ, the CDF, and the MNO disease? Because it just went throughout the whole structure and tied up those receptor sites, locked into those receptor sites, and created effects in those cells that are just totally foreign and totally unneeded by any concern that the structure has for itself.
Amazing. So circling back to the book information, and I want to try to understand further that I know I've heard you say it, Bruce Lipton, that our thinking creates the chemical that changes at our cell level.
Correct.
So
energy becomes, again, that's the book of John. In the beginning was the mind energy, and the mind energy became flesh.
Oh, that is so amazing.
Literally becomes, the chemistry becomes the physiology, becomes the literal physiology. And, in that is our creative ability, because we have the ability to do what, as far as we know, no other creature on the earth can do. We can originate mind energy. Every other creature is run by that which has already been structured into it. You think about the idea of free will, and, a million animals do brilliant things, but you never see an animal that says, I'm hungry, and, what I do when I'm hungry is I look and I look and I look and I find a nest on the ground and eat those birds' eggs. You'll never find an animal that finds the eggs and says, now I want those scrambled, so it goes and gets a cook pot, starts a fire, and breaks the eggs and you'll never find one that invents a new behavior, brings in something new. And in the creation story in Aramaic, where it says, go forth and multiply and replenish the face of the earth, everybody listened to that multiply command. but nobody knew what replenish meant. But in Aramaic, that word means bring the creation to completion. That you and I have a part to play when we tap into our true essence and our true purpose. We have a part to bring in something that's never been seen before. But it's hard to listen to, when they talk about repent. Repense means to turn our thinking another way, not, think of how terrible it is that you've sinned, but literally, most humans are looking at constructs of their minds from the past that replicate mind, and that's all it can do. And their full attention is on that, and the dramas and traumas and stories it tells and the garbage it feeds us, EGO, edging love out. And when they said repent, it wasn't be so terribly sorry and suffer for the terrible things you've done, but was literally to turn in a different direction. What does the Creator, if we stop playing out the dramas and traumas of the world and the way you want it to be, the things that we want in the world, the goals that we have, if we were to turn toward the mind of love in us and say, okay, give me instructions. What's waiting to come through? Like, what's next? The great inventors of the ages, the great sages of the ages did that. And that's why they talked about repentance. It wasn't be sorry for it. It was turn in a different direction. It's like the Creator's going, hey, look what I've got for you. Come here. Give me your attention. And most everybody's stuck in, oh, yeah, but what my father did and what my mother did and, oh, my God, what my spouse is doing and and they don't have time or the will to listen to what was called the still small voice. And they don't have the technology with which to shut the screaming voice of the ego up. And that's, to me, where, Yeshua delivered that technology 2,000 years ago. It was called forgiveness. And the world turned it into, let somebody else off the hook because that's moving in you. Instead of, go inside yourself, remove the noise, and then, and this was kind of what I was talking about with this particular movie at the beginning of the show today, was this woman who is pretty despicable, is so creative at her being despicable, and whatever it is she wants, she's going to go for. And that to me is just the story of the ego, when it's like the Creator's standing at the door knocking and going, I got a whole different game for you. It's like, no, the one I've got for you is based in love. Why don't you listen? Oh, but I have some rage to deal with. I have some hate to deal with. Don't you know I have to get even? And
Isn't that something? Wow. So
and
Michael,
each time one forgives, one more thought, each time we forgive, the generational pattern thoughts that are stored within the structure, it's like shaving off a little bit, another little piece of its intensity, shaving off another little piece of its intensity, quieting that voice of noise until it gets, the din becomes silent enough that we turn and it becomes easy to go, oh, there's a voice of love crying in the wilderness, trying to get my attention. Oh, you have a different job for me? Oh, okay, I'm available. And I love that tune of, I think it was Moses that the tune was made up for, of send me, I'm available. Send me, I'll do it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So can we say that, I think what I heard is that the first century Aramaic forgiveness process brings our creative abilities to completion or towards completion?
Well, I would say more accurately, it allows us to weaken the voice of the ego's distraction that keeps us from hearing what will take us to completion. As it weakens that, as that noise, as that raucous, raging noisemaker, the hate of this one, the fear of that one, the terror of that one, as that becomes quieter and quieter, another voice that was before not, you couldn't hear it over the noise, the other voice becomes, oh, I got it. And that other voice, because it is the voice of active present love, becomes the only option.
I see.
Becomes attractive. It's like the Creator's voice has always been there saying, I have a job for you. Are you available? Well, actually, I'm kind of busy right now with hating my enemy. Don't bother me with that stuff. Forgiveness weakens that voice, that noise in the mind, carbon-based memory, the mind of man. When they talk about the mind of man is not conceived of what lies in store. It's like we literally haven't become receptive to the ability to conceive. And, what we need to do, the metaphor of the Immaculate Conception, it had nothing to do with genitals. It was being available in purity for the active presence of love to enter into us and give us instructions on our real purpose. But while that noise is there, every instruction we be given is distorted.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I'm laughing to myself, so if you heard me, it is because I just heard Rocco Errico speak, I think it was from 20 years ago. I stumbled upon it searching something on the internet some days ago.
Right.
And he had a big funny about the Immaculate Conception. And so that's why I'm kind of giggling. But I don't want to get us off track. That was my first time listening to him. I know we've spoken concerning him before.
His stuff's awesome, yeah.
He brought quite a bit of humor into these interesting thoughts from religion.
Yeah. According to Rocco, there's a great deal of humor in the Aramaic scriptures, in Yeshua's voice especially. A great deal of double entendre and humor.
I very much enjoyed listening to him. That was the first time, and like I said, I wasn't searching for him. I just stumbled upon that. I said, boy, that sounds good. It wasn't very long. It was only about 27 minutes, I think. And
right, yeah.
So I'd like to just circle around one more time to Eva Detko's work, a question, a statement she had that I don't quite understand, and maybe I'm getting it wrong, but she goes back, we were talking about the cell receptors, and thank you for your thoughts there. And she said something that goes like this, that the cell receptors are much, much more receptive to energy frequencies than they are to the chemical signals. Didn't quite understand that, and just wondering what your thoughts are. I know that's her writing and that's her book, which I don't have in front of me. Any thoughts there? Is that even so, or?
Well, again, in the world where we believe in chemistry, that comment makes perfect sense. In the world where we believe that matter exists, talking about bodies makes perfect sense. But if we go with Einstein, he says matter doesn't exist. If matter doesn't exist, then bodies don't exist. What is a body? The body is nothing but a construct of the mind. We have this energy field. Yes, if you run into a frequency that is in resonance with it, bang, it seems solid. I put my two hands and clap them together and they seem solid, so they must be solid. But if I made my left hand out of radio waves and went to clap my hands together, what would happen? They would pass through each other because there's nothing solid about it. So in the same way, in the world where we believe in chemistry, because our brain takes certain frequencies and puts them into a structure that our mind perceives as matter, then we believe in that. But I wouldn't distinguish between the two as she does.
Okay. And that's where
so
I
I
was
would see
getting
them as identical.
hung up. So that's where I was getting hung up. I could not think through that. And thank you for helping me through it. That's very interesting. I'll look into it a little bit more and think about it, and probably come back on and talk more about it.
Cool. Yeah, when I believe the constructs my mind creates, there's a really sweet passage in the Course in Miracles that talks about the only purpose of words is to prove the error of the thinking that comes with words. And so to recognize things through the eyes of energy means that a lot of words that describe things that people have experienced are words that describe things that are constructs made up by the mind of man that are not accurate about the world the Creator created, not accurate about the world of energy. And when we do that, we divide, we create division, we separate things out. Oh, this is this and that is that. Well, in the world of frequency, there's no this is there, this or that is that. If I look at a radio wave, if I could look at a radio wave, if I had the faculties to look at a radio wave, I'd look at it and there'd be this, wiggly line, there'd be this structure. And if I were to, quote unquote, in the same way look at chemistry, there'd be this wiggly line that looks like structure. But it's all the same thing. There's no separation in it. But when you start separating things out, then we've now eaten of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. We say that one's bad and this one's good. And we're off on a wild goose chase of creating things based on an incorrect understanding of the world that the Creator created. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And that's why I think, back to Rocco, I think that's where he was going somewhat in his talk, and I believe his words were, there's not very many letters or words in the Aramaic language, I believe is what he was
indicating. It's a small,
yes,
limited number of words. And the more we separate things out, the more the mind learns to construct a picture for something, and then we give it a name. If there's an actuality in the world, something that's actually part of the actual creation, and I don't live in that frequency range, but I get some pieces of it, and my mind generates a picture for it. That picture is a symbol. Like chemistry is a symbol for a frequency in the actuality. So that symbol, there's a section in the Course that talks about you live by symbols, each one given a different name, and by this you separate creation out from itself, in essence, is what it's saying. So and most minds are governed not just by symbols, but then when I generate this symbol I call chemistry, I name it. So now the name of it is a symbol of the symbol. So now I'm 2 generations away from the actuality of the creation. The Course talks about you live by symbols, everything you've given a name. And by this you trick yourself into false perception. And false perception, if you've looked at that lesson on what is the world, the Course talks about the world is false perception. It is born of error. It has not left its source. It will remain no longer than the thought that gave it birth is cherished. In other words, everything that is a dis-ease will remain no longer than the mind energy behind it is valued for some reason. And that's where the ego always has a promise, always, again, back to this movie or TV series going, she's always got a promise for everybody. This woman who lies through her teeth about everything and has a con for everybody always has a promise for them. And they go, oh, yeah, that's what I want. And they go for that. And that's living by symbols of symbols. And ultimately, what we need to do is cultivate our direct relationship with the presence of love. And you're never going to find a symbol, a word, that will tell you what love is, or will ever tell you anything about the actual creation the Creator created. And everybody's out there trying to talk about it. 2,000 years ago, Yeshua has this experience. He goes into this space of being, and all the disciples are like, well, tell us about it. Tell us about it. He says, oh, God, there's so many things I want to talk to you about, but you can't hear it. You got no brain cells. It can't be done with words, with symbols of symbols twice removed from the truth of what the Creator created. And the idea is to get back to our connectedness with the world the Creator created, rather than trying to build up a tower of Babel, a tower of words to try to reach that understanding. People blame the Creator for confounding the language. Yeah, you see, we were getting close to God, so the Creator confounded the language, and it's all His fault that we didn't make it there. And that's the whole Tower of Babel story.
Yeah.
And all that the Creator was saying is, guys, you're fishing in the wrong pond. I don't care how sophisticated you get. I don't care how many words you make up. Your symbols of symbols will never give you the direct experience of what I'm offering you. But men are going to go off and do their own thing and play with the goals the way they want it to be. Again, it's another great line in the Course in Miracles. You must be aware of the distorting power of the way you want it to be. And why the core of forgiveness is the canceling, the collapsing of the goals, which opens the space for a near-life experience where we can directly experience who we are, rather than experience ourselves as a set of words that, mom or dad or some combination of power persons thereof spoke to us, and we go, yeah, well, that's the way I am. Mm-hmm. Because all of that's the sophisticated lie. All of that's the con, and it's always presenting something that we think will be valuable, but its value never pans out. And forgiveness collapses that, removes that, so we can get back to true value.
So all these words, symbols, not only separate us from our Creator, but also from one another.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeshua says, don't be known for your much speaking.
That's a lot.
Like all the words in creation, all the words in the Tower of Babel are never going to get us there.
Mm-hmm.
And what's happened is we've ascribed words a power that words don't have. We've ascribed symbols of symbols. The brain generates a construct called reality. The mind then names that reality. So again, it's a symbol of a symbol, and it's trying to reach the actuality behind the symbol of the symbol by creating more symbols. Building a tower so high, so many words. Oh, we'll get there. We just need to keep talking about it and figuring it out. And we're back to the number one pseudo solution of the non-being mind is, if I could just figure this out. Well, you can't figure it out, but you can always forgive it. And the only power that words have is they have the ability to describe how to carry out an instruction. And if we follow the instruction, you must forgive from your heart that which you project into your brain's image of your brother, the wrongs of your brother. As you do that, then that whole false tower collapses and it's gone, and we're back to direct relationship with love, where we started and where we've always been, but we paid attention to this mind that's got this whole fake story for us and suckers us in. How many times has the promise been made? If you just achieve this, if you just do this, then God will be happy with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no. If you go back to the truth of who you are, then you'll know that you're the stuff that joy is made of, and happiness will be a shadow that you aren't even interested in pursuing.
Yep. And for most of us, that's one of the first things we learned way back when.
That's exactly what, each child that comes into the world is fed. That's exactly a conversation that Jeanie and I have all the time for how do we get this into the language of our 4-year-old granddaughter so she can understand without getting lost in the game that's so pervasive on the earth that 7.5 billion people are playing it.
Mm-hmm.
They're playing it in governments, they're playing it in churches, they're playing it from pulpits, they're playing it from, wherever, instead of functioning out of what we're created to be, the active presence of love. I remember, this goes back several years ago, we had met someone who went to a church in Springfield, not too far from Heartland, and we were invited to go. And there was a minister up front, and he's preaching away, and he's preaching about love. And it was a pretty cool sermon, actually. It was really quite good. And his wife and his young son, who was maybe, I don't remember exactly, but maybe 1.5 years or 2 years. And he's up there just, preaching up a storm about love, and it was really quite intriguing. And then his son kind of broke away from mom. Their structure was there was an altar in front, and he was up there, and the pew right beside the altar had his wife and his little son. And his son comes up to, puts his arms out like, "Daddy, pick me up." And I just remember the dichotomy of him speaking these words, and then the flash of what I would have interpreted as rage toward his son of like, "Don't bother me, can't you see I'm busy?" And what message was delivered to that child who just wanted dad to pick him up, and didn't care whether dad was a preacher or was in the middle of a sermon or anything else. He just wanted to be embraced. And what he got instead was what I would equate as the psychic equivalent of a slap in the face. And, that sort of experience leaves an indelible mark that traps us in world of hostility and fear and seemingly no way out.
Huge.
Huge is the right word, yeah. And yet it seems like, that was just one little insignificant event in this boy's life. But I would bet, this probably goes back 15, maybe 20 years ago. So this kid's probably 20, 21, 22. But I bet if we went back and did a still point session with him, had him do a mind shift around dad, that would be one of the most terrifying memories he'd have. One of the memories that took him into the terror that so many people live in. That poem, most men lead lives of quiet desperation. That's the kind of thing that quiet desperation comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And those in their lives of quiet desperation from the desperate city to desperate country, where they satisfy themselves with the murder of muskrats. In order to get a thrill, in order to get a charge, they have to kill something. Or abuse something. Or someone. Passing on the power person dynamic.
Amazing.
And to recognize those things within ourselves when they surface, and rather than behave out of them, rather than speak out of them, rather than pretend to think out of them, to apply forgiveness to them and remove them. That's what takes us back to the virginal state. I think it was also referred to as circumcision of the heart. Circumcision wasn't about penises.
Yeah.
It was about the cleaning up of the unconscious. The errors in the unconscious that block us from truth. Or should I say more correctly, with which we block ourselves from truth.
Mm-hmm. Changes ourselves and changes the world.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Michael. I know you mentioned teacher training some point in the last few weeks. Is that something that's upcoming, or what is the process for that, please?
It is something that we've contemplated doing as an online Zoom intensive. And if enough people kind of, we've mentioned it a few times, so that if enough people say, hey, I'm interested in doing that, then we'll schedule it and we'll set up a Zoom intensive. It'll probably be a 20-week online intensive.
Okay, 20-week, once a week approximately, or?
It would probably be the way we did our last series of intensives. Is we did a, I think it was Sunday afternoon, Jeanie. We did a Sunday afternoon for 3 hours, and then we did a weeknight.
And then we did either a Wednesday or a Tuesday.
2 hours. Yeah, for 2 hours. So it'd be 5 hours a week.
About 5 hours a week, okay.
Probably with the teacher training. The teacher training is, if we were doing one at Heartland, it'd be a 9-day Why Is This Happening to Me Again intensive. And that's where we start out with the forgiveness process with Why Is This Happening to Me Again, then go into healing through relationships, communication. Did you hear what I think I said? Purpose, personal power and commitment, empowered to heal, mind shifters, hands-on energy field work, and still point breathing. So that would be the base, the 9-day why. And that's a prerequisite to the 9-day teacher training. And in that one we go into supporting people in really understanding and teaching the work. And so together that would be approximately a 20-week intensive.
Okay. So you would include all of that in the online Zoom?
That would all be part of it, yes.
Okay, so nothing I would be required to do ahead of time?
No, that would all be part of the whole process.
The whole process, okay. Yes. If you would put me on the list, we'd like to talk with you further. And cool. Thanks for bringing that all back. Been wonderful. Appreciate your thoughts through the last 40 minutes or so. Been wonderful.
All right, my friend. Appreciate your questions. You helped to guide us in good directions. So lots of love and blessings. And everybody, create the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. The world needs it.